put in Third International, and the Communist International comes up, and the prior one was the Fourth International. So the Communist International, Comintern, also known as the Third International, from 1919 to 1943, was an international organisation that advocated world communism. And the Fourth International was the Fourth International is a revolutionary socialist international organisation consisting of followers of Leon Trotsky or Trotskyists, with the declared goal of helping the working class overthrow capitalism and work towards international communism. So the Third International was basically, it was Lenin and Trotsky. And it was entered in 1943 so as not to antagonise the Allies. Can I even get past this thing? Oh yeah, there they are. This is the mob, the heavy mob. Right, so the 1909 ILGWU strike established the precedent for serious collective action in other branches of the garment economy. So it was a devouring inferno. Employees laboured 65 hours a week. Oh, how they suffer. And you've got to remember that the Jews are working for the Jews here. So the way I look at it is that, because this is how history dictates that I should look at it, is that, yeah, look, they probably had them made even before the fire. Let's see. Is that an anarchist there? Or is it just shadowed? But what a mob, eh? Hit squad. Calling them mourners, but life is cheap when it comes to Jews. Needling stories. Eastern European Jews arrived in the United States at the very apogee of unrestrained American capitalism. So capitalism is American. Early working class efforts to unionize, to strike, almost invariably failed. In a capitalist system, a union would fail, would it? Okay, let's see how that works out. Among Eastern European Jews, these initial unionizing ventures proved even more difficult than for other labourers. Oh, what a shame. Most Jews worked in sweatshops, in tenement quarters that were too small to foster a collective unionist outlook. And lo and behold, that's exactly what it fostered, because that's exactly what pans out. As early as 1885, garment workers participated in a brief, spontaneous walkout of some 10,000 cloak and skirt makers. Once they achieved a few minor concessions, however, they drifted away, allowing their union to die, and the improvements gradually were rescinded. Other occasional local strikes flickered out in ensuing years. Jewish workers appeared unorganizable, lamented Morris Hillquit, a union organizer and intellectual leader of the American Socialist Party. They were dull, apathetic, unintelligent. In 1888, at the initiative of Bernard Weinstein, and I'm wondering, is that relation to Harvey Weinstein, who ran Project Runway, which is to do with the fashion. So this Bernard Weinstein, a 19-year-old shirt maker and recent Bundist activist in Russia. So 1888, a 19-year-old Bernard Weinstein, a Bundist. Now let's just have a look at what Bundism is. Bundism was a secular Jewish socialist movement whose organisational manifestation was the General Jewish Labour Bund in Lithuania, Poland and Russia. And yet the same article is telling us that it wasn't fostering a union outlook. What did it say? A collective unionist outlook. Well, that's where they'd come from. Hillquit and several other Lower East Side Jews founded the United Hebrew Trades. In current terminology, the organisation's purpose, this is on myjewishlearning.com. So, again, if you were reading it, you'd think that it was talking about general people, but it's actually only ever talking about Jews. In current terminology, the organisation's purpose was one of consciousness raising, simply of fostering union organisation within the garment industry and other Jewish trades. And indeed, by 1890, the little group managed to establish some 22 unions, including a typographers' union, a shirt makers' union, a knee pants makers' union, a cloak makers' union, a cap makers' union, a bakers' union, even a Yiddish actors' union, and all this amid American capitalism where you couldn't form unions. Their early idealism doubtless was intense, even messianic, but it was still essentially unfocused. Early in its history, the United Hebrew Trades enthusiastically accepted founder and leader of the New York-based Labour Socialist Labour Party, Daniel De Leon, request for union participation in the May Day Parade. So the May Day Parade obviously is a great European-rooted tradition. It's the celebration of the fertility rites, and where a lot of people would meet their beau, and that's where you would make relations for bringing up families. Ostensibly a demonstration for the 8-hour workday, the event signified much more to the 9,000 marching Jews. Bands played the Marseillaise and workers' songs. Red flags fluttered from hundreds of tenement windows. Marches among the 16 Jewish unions and socialist organisations making their way to Union Square carried placards. There's an association, isn't it? Union and Union Square. So the Union won the war. So the placards were reading "Bread and freedom, down with wage slavery." Continuous rain could not dampen the crowd's spirits. And you've got to remember that all these Jews are working for Jews. The Jews won't be working for no one else. And yet they're complaining about work conditions, wages, all these things. But it's aimed at American capitalism, as they call it. So you invent a concept to target, and then utilize that concept as your vehicle for getting your own way, and that drives a momentum then, and people often will give sympathy towards the cause, like what appears to be a noble cause, and actually it's acting in reverse, which, as we're seeing played out now, is a takedown of American society or Western society. The continuous rain could not dampen the crowd's spirits. Well, they all knew what they were in it for. Abraham Cahan, which is probably Cohen, one of the speakers, proclaimed this imposing demonstration is the beginning of the great revolution which will overthrow the capitalist system and erect a new society on the foundation of genuine liberty, equality and fraternity. And as Charlotte Knobloch said about the RFD, the Alternative for Deutschland, which is, a Jewish setup. It's only an alternative for Deutschland in that it is an alternative for Deutschland. It's not trying to count Deutschland in it at all. It's the alternative. And she said that that party can't be trusted until it's all Jewish, which was reflected in Louisiana Berger's Labour Party, that they can't be trusted until it's basically all Jewish. So none of the speakers paid much attention to the issue of the 8-hour workday. Oh, it was saying, De Leon and others orated in the same vein, so they're all preaching revolution. Eventually they would have to, it was the warning of the newly established American Federation of Labour, and specifically of its president Samuel Gompers, born of Dutch Sephardic parents in the ghetto of London. Gompers had come to the United States, obviously Sephardic as Jews, in the midst of the Civil War. Employed as a cigar roller on New York's Lower East Side, he participated in the founding of the Cigar Makers Union, then worked his way up through the German-language Central Labour Council. In 1886 he negotiated the formation of the American Federation of Labour and became its first president. As philosophically pedestrian as De Leon was intellectually charismatic, Gompers was entirely pragmatic in his approach to working class issues. Ideologies held no interest for him, as he saw that free enterprise was a fact of life, and he was determined to fight for labour's rights within that system. Without Jewish loyalties or concerns, Gompers at first made no secret of his distaste for the United Hebrew Trades and its windy messianism. In turn, their membership heartily reciprocated his suspicions, but with the demise of De Leon's Socialist Labour Party, the United Hebrew Trades was left with little choice except to allow its unions a certain tentative identification with the AFL. The latter appeared clearly to be a single labour organisation capable of achieving bread and butter improvements for the working man.